Hey, what's up, everybody? JT Seaboy coming at you with the Culture Stream podcast. Today is a special podcast, something that we kind of been wanting to focus on. I know recently we talk about like powwow stories and our travels and things kind of more geared towards our powwow people, and necessarily like our native people in general. But I think today's topic is something that everybody can relate to. All those in recovery, all those that are having trouble with addiction, and just that path of drugs and alcohol. But today I am joined by my Uncle Verdell Smith over here, and then
Todd Mckenzie.
Todd Mckenzie. Sorry about that. And then, of course, Lawrence, our other host. I want to give a shout out to Jude and Tones and Lorenzo for, I know they got things going on. But yeah, I want to kick this over to Lawrence to lead the discussion. Off camera, we had a bunch of topics.
Man, we had a lot of stories. Pathways to health and wellness. A road to recovery is made easier by support of their loved ones, family in recovery. And Verdell, the name of it, the Reachout name?
It's Anishinaabe.
Anishinaabe, living well. And I wish we would have had some of the stories, but we're going to go over some of the highlights. We got and met about 1:00, and now it's about 2:15, just trying to come around the table and figure out where we're all coming from. And Verdell has had life stories, traumas, and worked through a lot of different things. Myself, I've done the same thing. Todd, JT, we've all been there. And right now, it just seems that the tribe is putting a lot of money into the expense of addiction. And we have a whole recovery center in the Bismarck area called Good Road. We have a lot of sober living and sober living lodges in a lot of our communities. But here's the problem, is that we've got repeat customers after repeat customers after repeat customers. And I really am excited with Verdell going over his stuff. They had a big meal here last night, and a lot of people talked last night. I wish we could have came in. I know Duke gave one of your talks, Duke Driver from the KMHA 91.3 on your FM dial. And just sitting around talking about our pain, our suffering, our recovery, how we built ourselves up, what have we learned, how we've tried to become better men, better partners to the significant others, and overall better human beings to our community, our culture, our people, our way of life. And I really think that Verdell has hit on some things through his own PTSD discovery and recovery that he wants to share. And when we do these things, a lot of people will laugh. And it's a negative laugh because they don't understand. So I'm going to ask you, if you have to watch this a couple of times, there's some stories that we're going to tell, and they're our own kind of personal stories of how we became these other people. And I don't mean Verdell morphed into somebody totally different and he's a superhero now. I'm just saying that the Verdell that was before into the Verdell that is now with his significant other, there have been a lot of learning, and he's grown into the man that he was not fostered or put into, but the man that now he wants to be, the significant other that he wants to be. We're still full of negativity, self-doubt from where we came, but we fight that every day. So Verdell, as we go through these things, go ahead and start a little bit of your journey, how we came to the pathways to health and wellness. A lot of the stuff we were talking about before the camera rolled, the resilience, and I think are some wickedly brilliant terms. I want you to the living well, what you comment about that, talk a little bit about that, but just tell a little bit of your story and how we got here.
Okay.
Verdell.
So, first of all, how I come about this, that's basically like a prevention program for type 2 diabetes that I did in college. And so as I started to come across this, one of the things that you have to do to graduate is you have to do a capstone project or a thesis. So as I was doing my capstone project, you can't just make statements, right? You got to prove it or disprove it. So as I was going through that, one of my things was food addiction is one of the contributing factors to, type 2 diabetes. So when I tried to figure that out, I was like, so what is addiction? If you ask somebody what causes addiction, you're probably going to get a lot of different answers. And some, even the experts, the people in the mental health field, the DSM-5, the psychology Bible, there's all they describe is the risk, the symptoms. So there's no clear-cut answer. But through my study and stuff, I'm going to say with 98% confidence that level is that it's caused from adverse or traumatic childhood events or experiences. And they don't have to be a lot. It could be getting teased or bullied or name calling or maybe, and a lot of it has to do with our interpretation or perception of what happened. Somebody might have slapped you in the head and kicked you in the rear end, and to you, that makes you a bad person. It keeps happening and turns from, I did something bad to I am bad. You know what I mean? So, and it depends on what happened, what the situation is. And so when you start to understand all that stuff, like for me, I understood there's two addictions. And that's why it's so hard to treat, is because there's no clear definition of what it is.
Verdell, you said a little bit before the shaming. Yeah. Also, that's another one. You didn't put that in there, but that was a big thing we talked about before. Yeah. The shaming. Yeah.
So when you start to understand the dynamics of addiction, there's two types. There's the substance abuse, and then there's I call it the pleasure seeking. So the substance abuse are the stuff you put in your body. That's drugs, alcohol, food, and tobacco. And those are to cope, escape, numb, avoid emotional pain. And this other addiction is pleasure seeking. That's like gaming, gambling, shopping, pornography, things like that. So when you start to understand that, you start to understand is like, well, what is the emotional pain? And that's that, I call it a showaswaniku. Somebody diminished your spirit. It's a Rikra word for somebody wounded you. And because of that wounding, it changes your identity and it changes the meaning of who you are. So your identity changes to, I'm a victim now. I'm powerless. I'm helpless. I'm worthless. And then the meaning becomes like, I'm a failure. I'm powerless. I'm a burden. I'm a failure. Things like that. Those affect you through your life. It keeps on. But, so in order to understand that causes emotional pain, what people don't understand is trauma. So when you start talking about trauma, I realize there's also two types of trauma. There's that PTS trauma, and then I call it the Showaswaniku trauma. So the PTSD is the things that are coming outside, like war, natural disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes and car accidents, house fires. You get triggered by your senses. You smell smoke, or you see blood, or hear a loud noise. You're triggered. And what happens is you feel like your life is in danger. It takes you right back to that instance. This other Showaswaniku trauma is more of an internal thing. It's like you get triggered. It's like you feel like your life is in danger because you get separated from other people. You're separated from your people, like your parents or your tribe. Humans have this real strong attachment instinct. You have to be attached to your parents, or if your parents, something happens to them, you got to be attached to your tribe. And if you don't feel that, if you get disconnected, that's the trauma. And so it's more of an emotional thing, right? Mm. So I always say it's like PTSD is you were attacked by the saber-toothed tiger. Showaswaniku is you're trying to avoid being attacked by the saber-toothed tiger by being connected, staying in, that whole thing about survival. People don't understand that, but if you look at a lot of stuff in psychology, everything comes back to the survival instinct. You know, and if you look at us humans, like everything about us, our senses, our thinking, our emotional, our nervous system, that fight, flight, and freeze, all that all comes back to survival. Even our spiritual side of it, it's like, that's what gives us hope, and, that kind of gives us a vision for the future and faith. You know what I'm getting? All that. So when we start to realize that, then we start to realize how that separation causes all that emotional pain. You know, when we start to get separated from other people. So in order to really understand that, we have to have resiliency, and that's what this program is about. This Pathways to Wellness. It's about understanding yourself and getting that self-knowledge and that self-awareness. What am I thinking? You know, what am I feeling? And what are my triggers? You start to really understand yourself fully, and you could start to head off all that stuff, you know, like what you said, you have that sword, that's it, you know. Like,
that saber sword.
You start
the Star Wars, you just deflect all of these things that come in to mess with you and bring negativity. You've learned how to block them now. Before, when we're sitting there, we don't have the lightsaber, we don't have nothing. We're just standing there taking all of the punches.
Right.
Verdell, in what you're saying, we didn't talk about this before, but it just came to me now in my own craziness.
Yeah.
What we don't realize on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, we're 2 generations, maybe 3, but 2 generations away for some PTSD that happened when they flooded us. And then that kind of became historic trauma. And why I say that is I never went through the flood myself, but my grandma did. Yeah. And my grandma instilled that into me, what they lost, what was happening, how they felt. Yeah. And so even though I've never been there, I still have that twinge of what happened. Yeah. And that's kind of historic trauma. I try to not give that to my children at all. I just say it's an event that happened. I don't elaborate on what my grandma went through and my grandpa went through. But in a way, that was a traumatic PTS event that triggered maybe our grandfathers or our mothers, because you're a little older than me, Verdell, that had that. Because Shirley was probably a young girl. Her dad is the one that had that historic picture. Your grandfather that signed that in order to get trauma. I mean, your mom must have had that big time. Yeah. And then maybe historically brought that to you. But what I'm saying is, this is an event that we really don't understand that has a big, long ripple effect that maybe 2 generations now we're just trying to deal with.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of what people don't understand is, like, if you look at what happened even in the boarding schools, it just mirrors what I'm talking about. Because how I understood this is they did a thing called the ACE study. I don't know if you ever heard of that. You ever hear of that? No. Adverse childhood experiences. They took 17,400 upper white class people in Southern California, and they said, look at this. Look at what happened. These people have these illnesses. And they only had 10 questions revolved around abuse, neglect, and dysfunction. The more the boxes, the higher level of the illness. Uh-huh. So they didn't understand. And that's how I understood it. It was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense, because why are these people getting sick? Well, the only reason I could come up with is because of addiction. You know, you don't, like, it doesn't morph, like, if you, like, say, you got foot cut from the basketball team and it really bugs you, it doesn't morph into illness. What morphs into illness is that coping with the emotional pain, the cigarettes, the smoking, or the, you know what I'm getting?
So what you're saying, Verdell, is in the resilience of most people, they would bounce back.
Right.
They would go to camps. They would try to get better. So next year they'd make that team. But if they don't have that resilience, they may just not play basketball. They may become a druggie or an alcoholic. And feel that need of I could have been by any of these substances.
Right. Yeah.
No resilience.
Yeah. So that's what the whole thing is like, resilience is bouncing back or rebounding from setbacks and all that. And what this program is trying to do is we're trying to get into the characteristics of a resilient person. You know, when you start to understand all this stuff, you start to realize is like, that I was telling about the connection. The human survival instinct is that in order to become a part of a tribe is that we have to have certain needs met, like a sense of belonging, love and comfort and support and stuff like that. then we feel part of the group. We feel part of it. When we don't feel that, and that's where the abuse and neglect and stuff comes in. And it doesn't even have to be that much. You know, I know some people might get upset, you know, but that's all right. It's like, but to understand that stuff is like, now I understand it, because abuse and the opposite is that love and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so when I started to see that and understand that stuff, that's when I started to understand about addiction and trauma. Started to look at the human condition, you know, like this is what goes on with us, is like we don't have resiliency. We don't have that ability, because if something happens to you and you lost everything and you don't have the inner strength to come back, it's really hard. You know, you're going to struggle with your life. You're going to wonder, you know, and I'm going to share a story with you just to like help you understand. So as I'm going through all this understanding about this diabetes stuff and all this stuff, I was still angry and bitter and resentful because of my divorce. I was with my ex-wife for about 27 years, you know, and so when
literally grew up with each other, but literally.
Anyway, so when I got divorced, what I was going through is like, wow, holy smokes, man! It rocked my world. It's just like I just felt shocked, and I felt lost and confused. My emotions were up and down, you know. I was like one day sad and lonely, next day, you know, this and I felt grateful. It was just all kinds of emotions. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My hair started falling out. I had a big long braid. I cut it off, you know. And so I realized it's like, you know what? I'm still angry. So my wife was my new wife. I got remarried. She wanted to be a psychologist, and so we start talking. And so anyway, she's like, describe what you're feeling, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, I feel abandoned, rejected, betrayed. I felt injustice. I felt all these negative things. And then she's like, well, you know, whenever I try to talk to you, you always bring up your wife, your ex-wife. Why is that? You know what? You always blame her for that. She said, let me ask you something. She said, what was your part in it? What was your part of the demise? When I start to think about it, I could just rattle it off right now. I was like, well, I was insecure, I was distrustful, and I was emotionally unavailable. That's just the bottom line. So when she said, well, where do you think that come from? That's kind of like, it was kind of like unraveling a ball of yarn, you know, I unravel all that and then start to realize, come back from way back, is like, holy smokes. My core beliefs were the abandonment, rejection, betrayal, and that core belief was controlling my life. And it all started from that Ashoa Swaniko, getting wounded as a kid, wound after wound. And even some of that, like I said, wasn't even true. Cause like I could look at it and I could see like my part in the marriage was I was insecure and stuff like that. And a lot of that probably wasn't even true. I was making myself unhappy and her unhappy and you know, all that stuff. And I didn't even realize it. And like, I was like, we were talking before, I'd even have dreams of her cheating, you know, and laugh about it now. But at the time,
it was real.
Yeah.
It was a real deal. I also want to point out just in behalf of my brother Verdell here is that he didn't go from one marriage to the other. It took him a little while in between. The other thing is that when he chose the partner that he did, these are things that you wouldn't do with another partner. And they were able to clinically, because of her stature, work these things out to get to become the full-fledged partners that they were. So again, there was a lot of intimacy and naked emotions and raw emotions that were on the table. And instead of running away from them, they figured a way out where they're really healthy now. So I just wanted to point that out. Yeah. The other thing too, from Verdell and all of you watching, is that this is the thing that gets us in trouble too. And we didn't talk about this, but it all comes to me as we're visiting right now. There's this real arrogant thing, and it's called being a man. And if you've never been a man, you don't know what I'm talking about. And that is whatever we were programmed with, we try to be. And so Verdell was programmed with these things. I was programmed, Todd, JT, we're all programmed with these things. But when we look into the real world of feeling and how we do in significant others, that practicality or that man is not going to make it. And so we mold into the guys that we are now. And looking back, we were not the guys that we were there, having lack of understanding, lack of empathy, lack of whatever, realizing that what I put into the marriage, we're getting back out. And if I put toxicity in it, we're going to get toxicity out. All these things come with a failure and realizing that failure. And so that's why all this has come to the head with Verdell, with all of this and bringing this study and now bringing this pathways. So again, Verdell, I know they haven't heard the conversation we had before, but I'm really glad that you brought that up. I'm just trying to make it safeguards that people don't just say, geez, Verdell did that and Verdell did that. Because on the outside looking in, Verdell, they thought you were a man trying to handle your business. And they didn't know why, and nobody was going to ask you, except those Curious George sisters that say, why in the hell did you do this? And you could have done this differently. You know, exactly. Same with me. Same with me. So, but my deal is, I think in revealing this story, we've come a long way from that Verdell to this Verdell. And this Verdell has a whole different deal. And that's what we're getting to. Again, just wanted to clarify a few things, Verdell. I don't want you to look like you're in a bad light because as a man,
you know what? It don't even bother me. I mean, people can say whatever they want to say because to me, you know, that experience really helped me a lot.
Yes.
It helped me learn and grow and heal, you know? And so getting back to the thing about what it was, so I didn't realize that I brought all this stuff into the marriage, right? And so when I start healing, I thought I was doing well. And so one night, my wife's phone does this diagnostic check on her phone at about 2 a.m. Ting, ting. Right away, I wake up and I hear that and blind rage, man. You know, go right back to that old behavior, that old thought. You know, it's like, dang it, man, what's going on here? So the next day after I have my hissy fit and all that, you know, we start talking about it and it kind of gets me emotional, but what really changed was she actually kind of, she said to me, she said, I could fall over tomorrow and you're going to be okay. She said, look at yourself, you know, look in the mirror, look at what you've done. You know, you raised 3 families, basically, you quit drinking, you got educated. I mean, you've done all these things. You should be proud of yourself. Sorry,
But with us, as us looking at ourselves as men, shit, that's nothing. But the outside world, and that's what I'm saying, brother. You need that outside world to say, these are otherwise in our head, we're not going to acknowledge it as men. And we're not going to say, hey, should I did all right. Let me take credit for it. Let me just sit here for a second and realize that I've done whatever. It's that outside help that makes us realize, not to be cocky and not to be whatever, but to just realize for the first time, I am doing all right. I am okay.
I ain't messed up. I ain't that person that
you're not that bad guy that these things happen to. And for once you can realize that's this, but it's that intimacy of that relationship. It's that intimacy of sharing all that and being strong enough for each other that made that. But again, as men, we don't want to take that. We just want to, just leave me alone and being the whatever I am. And you got to realize those small victories as you go. Otherwise, you don't become anything. And that's part of the pathways to resilience. As it built you up to be the man you are now. This is why I love this story. So keep going, Verdell.
So anyway, so when I start to look at it and I said, hey, I'm not who I think I am. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that bad. And so when it was actually the realization of resiliency, you know what I mean? It's like, so you have to kind of like, when I started to understand resiliency, I'm like, wow, I can see that I do have problems. I do have, things I'm not proud of. You know what I mean? Like I am arrogant. I am a know-it-all. I am kind of greedy. I am kind of,
come on, Verdell. Work in progress.
All that. So that's why when I realized that, then I realized now I know what needs to change. Now I know where my emotions are coming from your core beliefs. I mean, you start to understand this whole big thing And that's a big part of resiliency is to really understand, because when you understand, you start to get to control your thoughts and your emotions, like, we're talking about. And you also understand your triggers. Those triggers are actually gifts. You know what I mean? Like like if you understand that, okay, why am I getting triggered? Well, there's something I didn't work on.
Yes. Yes.
Something I need to work on. So, that's a big part, I think, of resiliency. And we talk about breaking cycles, all that generational stuff. If we can start to understand ourselves and get better and heal, through the self-knowledge, self-awareness, and self-concept, build ourselves back up and believe in ourselves and all that good stuff, that's when we start to heal. That's when we start to grow, and we can teach our kids, And
the first step, Verdell, you said, is a step that a lot of people don't like to do, is look at the person in the mirror. And is that the person that you see yourself being?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, then how do you change it? Because as we go through life, and women have a problem with this, and I'll probably catch hell for this, but women want to change who that man is. They don't realize the man that they got. And delusionally, they think they can change. And one of the first things you realize going through all of this, trauma, resentment, the only person that can change you is yourself.
Right.
And if you look at that person in the mirror, Verdell, is that person the same person you seen 10 years ago? And it's probably not. It's probably not the Verdell that you think about in your head when you think of the good things you want for Verdell. But it's a hell of a lot closer than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
And the whole thing to all of that in our trauma is to realize, this is why I get in trouble, Todd, is because I will, if we're visiting and I speak, what I see is the truth. Okay. And I'll just say it. Some people will get mad at me and they'll walk away. You're full of it. You don't know anything. And 3 months later, they'll say, hey, you were right. I really had to take a look at myself. And I'm not saying I'm anything. I'm just, once in a while, I can see these things when you're bullshitting about your life or you're bullshitting about whatever. So I'll call people out. I get into these intimate conversations with people and I call people out. So it's just like that, Verdell. You saw it. And through the divorce, I would say, Verdell, if you were to ask me and not knowing the story, I would have thought you handled it as best as you could as a man. Okay. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It just means we rubbed a little dirt on it and we walked away. And that's all. That's what it is to be a man. Okay. But to actually get through it and go through it, there's a lot of crying. There's a lot of intense looking at yourself. There's a lot of intense looking at, I know there were two of us, but what did I contribute? And then you take responsibility for what you contributed. And then you move forward saying, I don't want to contribute that to somebody else.
Right.
And how do I change that? And again, as knuckleheads, as I call us men, knuckleheads, it takes us a while to get that change to go through. And the triggering, you're talking about the triggering. I love that. Triggering is a way to say, because that happened with me and my girlfriend. I got triggered and I just went off. And I had to apologize later. I said, you know what? 10 years it took me to get to where I'm at to even date you. And I found this trigger. So let me stand back and see where in the hell that's coming from, because I don't. And what I had to realize that it was okay for me to love my ex, even though she put me through hell and back, to love my ex because she gave me 3 beautiful children. I will love her forever. And it's okay. I'm not in love with her now. And it's all right that I have somebody now to share my life with and my love and my journey. But that was the trigger. And I had to look, I thought I was done with everything. And I had told her that, and it gave way to conversation over conversation of intimacy, things that we needed to work out. It brought stuff to her, so that triggered event, just like you said, Verdell, opened up 6 different things that we didn't know we had to work on. And we worked on them. So triggering events, when they go through and they happen, why did they happen and how do we fix them? When they're triggered on you, you have to step back and say, that's your trigger. You're going to have to handle that. Okay. But we get mixed up and with, oh, geez, I triggered that person. I feel really bad. No, it's a good thing. And if you understand it to be a good thing, you can work on it. So Verdell, bringing out a lot of good points, JT. I just love this. I wish I was here last night. Not only for the prime rib, but all the talking.
Yeah. So what we try to get into is we try to understand our core beliefs, and because basically those core beliefs are defense mechanisms.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They're like, if you ever run into a toxic person, right, you'll just know right away. It's like their whole wall is the defense mechanism. You know what I mean? And
you'll joke with them, and then they'll explode at you, and you're like, whoa, what did I just say? But again, it's because they're trying to save themselves, but in a toxic way, not with the lightsaber to block all of these things, but in a toxic way of a castle that they've built around themselves, that anything that hits it, they react.
Yeah.
And as Indian people, we're more reactionary than proactive. And I think, Verdell, all these things are being proactive and not reacting at the point.
Right. So we talk a lot about shame too. I was telling Todd, I said, when we get this shame, what we really don't understand is that on the opposite side of the coin, shame it's a harmless emotion. And what shame is saying is like, I'm unlovable. Shame is really on the opposite side of the coin is like, I want to be loved. Mm-hmm. That's all I want. I just want to be loved. And you're making me feel unlovable. You know what I mean? And so when we start to understand all these emotions and all that, we start to understand like none of this stuff is negative. Shame isn't negative. Trauma isn't negative. Addiction has a purpose. You know what I mean? They're all come back to our survival, our human survival instinct. So when we start to understand that, then we could start to heal and we start to not take things so personal. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to be reactive all the time.
Well, the other thing too, Verdell, is these words aren't ugly words. They're deals that we need to learn how to be just regular words again. Yeah. They don't have the negative connotations that we would have, like shame. Yeah. So you're trying to shame me. Does that mean you can't love me? Does that mean you can't just give me some love? And the person doing the shaming is going, what? I never heard that before. Mm-hmm. But we're not afraid of shame because we've been there before and we just throw it back at them because it's a them problem. Now, before it was a us problem because we couldn't handle it. Our mind was, shame is a bad word. Shame means this and shame means that. And I'm a bad person. Why do they shame me? Mm-hmm. Am I not good enough? All these things seep in. But when you understand what shame is, that's not me. I'm not shaming myself. It's that other person. Yeah. Maybe there's something wrong in that person I've identified and they have to come and shame me. You say, Verdell, you're trying to shame me, but you know, Verdell, I love you. Yeah. So you can shame me all you want. That's what you need to do. Yeah. Then it gets thrown back at them and then they got to handle that. Yeah. And then you walk away because guess what? You use that lightsaber, triggered whatever, throw it back at them. Yeah. That's when you realize the toxicity of people. It's just like we talked about who has your back. Are the people complimenting you really actually complimenting you? Yeah. You know, because my deal is I want to say to all the Sober Logic, great job. Get a second chance. Come back in here. Work your way through your culture, your way of life. Become the man, the father, the citizen, or the society member that you could have been. Yeah. And live your life that way. Be proud. Yeah. Because you've got it. Everybody should have a second chance. You know, everybody should have a whatever. But remember, resilience. You're possibly going to fail. Yeah. And that's all right. You're going to get back up, dust yourself off. Yeah. What did I do wrong? Fix it. Move forward. Yeah. It's a lot different than just handling and masking your addiction by coming back to the reservation and what? Yeah. ODing because you're taking too much drugs or being in a car accident because now you're drinking heavily, you know. I just wonder, Verdell, I mean, that's a big epidemic with us too, that if we get them into this pathways, maybe there's another set of thinking that they could be looking at. Right. Because you already are sober. Yeah. You already have evaluated. Yeah. Now let's take a look at it through the pathways. Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that should be instituted maybe with our sober living or when they come back instead of maybe AA meetings, which you do here too, part of that growth in a conversation.
Well, we always talk about it as like an aftercare.
Yeah.
Or even a prevention program.
Even before.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention one more thing, like for what was really important that we talked about. Yeah. Was that as I was doing this study, I come across this this article, and it was by this guy. His name was Abraham Maslow. He has this pyramid of needs, human needs, and so at the bottom of it it's like food, water, air. The next part is safety and security. That's like resources, like a house and that kind of stuff. And then the next part was belonging, and that's where you get your love and your support and acceptance and all that. And then the next part was identity. So in order to have an identity, you had to be like the storyteller, the hunter, the leader, the healer, or an elder. You have a teacher. And at the very top was self-actualization. And when I started looking at that, I realized it's like, as I was reading it, I was like, you know what? This is how I got sober. I didn't go to treatment. Mm-hmm. I started going to the Reachout Sweat Lodge in Whiteshill, Glen Perkins. Mm-hmm. And I realized that when I started looking at it, I was like, this is exactly what happened to me. I felt a sense of belonging, because like me and you talked about, when you're not, like, I grew up here in Mandaree, and I'm a Reachout, right? And I'm in Hidatsa country, and you know how people like to tease, and it might not even been so bad, but it was, to me, I interpreted it as. You interpreted it as. Yeah. It was like, arigado, and blah, blah, you kind of get the derogatory stuff. And then I also, after I realized, is like, a lot of my issues revolved around my name, my parents got together in the 60s. And back then it was like, it was disgraceful to get divorced or to have illegitimate, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
all that stuff.
That was a big, big deal back then. Maybe not as much now, but man, that was night and day as it is now. I mean, it's totally different. Yeah. So I agree with you.
And then, so a Reachout marrying Hidatsa or vice versa, that was also looked down on. You know what I mean? And so here I am, the product of all three of them. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God. So I grew up with that real, kind of a shame way, of everything. And that's how I understand all this stuff. So when I sobered up, I realized I'm going over there, I'm listening to these guys. They're talking about the history. They're talking about, all these good things. And they're saying, hey, come back, man, come back. And I really felt like I was finally wanted. You know what I mean? Like, man, it feels good. It feels, and I felt proud to be, proud to be a Reachout. Yeah. After that, I'm like, I'm never going to think bad about myself. So that's how I sobered up. That I got that feeling, and I never craved for alcohol. I never felt that need. You know what I mean? It was like,
so on that,
I know who I am.
With who you were.
Yeah, I know who I am. I know what I'm about, and I know where I belong. I belong to people. I belong to my tribe. And that's where so all these things kind of made me understand about the survival stuff and all that, Tell your story about what you told me about your.
Which one?
Mexican stuff.
Oh, okay. So for me, back in the late 60s, I spent a lot of time going to Head Starts in Watts, California, Palm Springs, down in Rincon, where my mom's tribe is. My mom is 15/16 Rincon band of Mission Indians, and my dad is 3/4 Hidatsa and so much Mandan. I think we're more Mandan than anything. Anyway, coming back, I always tease on the mic, and I was telling the story from a different perspective, but how I tease on the mic is that my dad was a relocation, and I'm a relocation baby that came back to the reservation. And so when he brought his wife, my dad was turning 30 and my mom was 19 when she had me. And we came back to Mandaree, and of course I had been in Watts and all these places. So I spoke a little Spanish. Don't know any of it now, but I spoke enough Spanish that I remember coming back and my dad coming back from work, and I said, "Hola, papi," which means hello, dad, and I had observed a lot of the Spanish culture. And so I always tease on the mic that when I said, "Hola, papi," he said, "It's time to go back to Mandaree." And so we ventured back into Mandaree. And so when I got here, I kind of relished in the thought that they thought I was a little Mexican boy. And you have to remember going from the urban setting, my hair was down to my shoulders. And at that time in Mandaree, if you didn't have an onion cut or a skin head at that time, you weren't an Indian from here, because we all had our hair short. Nobody had braids. And I don't even know if anybody had braids. But when I came, I had sandals and I had hair that were long, and my mom would braid it and people would be like, what the hell, you know, in 1970 something. So I'm not saying I started the trend or I did whatever. I kind of like to take credit, but it's not. But my family would only acknowledge me. My dad's siblings, not his mom and dad, but they all thought I was Mexican. They all said, this guy is a Mexican. And they all treated me that way. And so, of course, being the a-hole that I was at that time, not opposed to the a-hole that I am now, I would get all mad and I would throw my hat down and I would do the Mexican hat dance around my hat. Just to show them, you know, if you think I am, I am. But what I was telling Verdell is, in a way of coping with that at that end, being that young and being an a-hole, it still scarred me. On my identity of who I am, you know, and I tell people all this all the time. I was probably heading down a path that maybe I would be on the other side of alcoholism or addiction or any of this because of this hurt. Out of the middle of nowhere, Goldie picks me up at 24, 25. I think he just fell off a roof at this time when we were working for Comp Grant, or maybe after that, because Verdell and me worked together at Comp Grant. He was the main man. Anyway, in that, I had to become the speaker for our people in societies and way of life. And I'm like, how's a half Mexican, as they called me in my own family, going to talk about head-ons away? And it really shaped me, because I tell the story that Shirley would come, his mom, his late mom, Shirley Smith, she would come and have me announce things and do things, say things, because she said, if this is who you are, you need to know the Arikara side. So I try to be friendlier on the Arikara side too, but sometimes the Arikara people get mad at me and they'll say, who did you know that? Who told you that? And I say, Shirley Smith. And they go, oh, okay. You know, they kind of back down, you know, but I have still Florence and Grace and the different ones, especially from that family, and the late Russell. Now he's gone, but that'll talk to me on Arikara ways and stuff like that. So I've gotten to be vastly known through that too. So I try to expand all three tribes, you know, and do whatever. And I even have been called, Lawrence Baker, you know, I'll say Newtown, or they'll say Hedadza. At one time I said Arikara, and I said, holy man, I'm a Arikara now, you know? And I thought that was cool. I think some of the people back home were mad, but it just said Arikara on there. I was like, hey, I represent all three tribes. But that trauma of identity, of not knowing, you know, it was hard. It was hard. But when I got to be 25, and maybe I was clueless, maybe I was I had just came back from DC. I was looking for a job, trying to start my life. And all of a sudden she did that to me. It gave me that identity. And so in that higher chart, and again, this chart was from the Blackfeet people,
Blackfeet, right? That guy stayed with, I think he lived with the Blackfeet for like 30 years.
30 years. So those who you can be are mainly geared towards our indigenous people. Right. So when they put me in there and as identity, as the MC, I don't think the drinking was as hard, or I don't think the risk taking or I don't care, because I was like, holy man, I hold this position now. I have to be alive. I have to live long enough to do all of this stuff. Now, grant you, it didn't mean I sobered up right away and became a church boy. I fought against being a church boy all through Catholic boarding school. But my deal was, it made me realize that there was a place and an identity for me and to fit into the community more, and all three communities. So, I mean, it was exactly like you said, Verdell. All of a sudden, a sense of place to be. And I remember, because I'm so light, I used to get teased, and David Man and Boy Man, they used to tease me, and I'd just go fall apart. And about a year after that, I would sit there and go, wait a second, you guys are lighter than me. How am I the outcast? You know, Boy Man and David, they were light. Both of them are not here with us anymore, but those are the guys I grew up and, Verdell grew up with. But my deal is, it's all in the perception of who we think we are. And it may not be so on the outside, but on the inside, that's what burns. That's what hurts. That's what harbors this pain and harbors these different things. And so it's reflected. And so all of us at this table have that. And I find it surprising because it's more prevalent than we think in that thinking. It becomes who we are. Even you, JT, being down in Wapaton with your dad, who's just the Lakota guy. I mean, the man for the Siouan language and the emceeing and practitioner of our culture, stories. I mean, I could go on and on. I seen him talk in DC several times, take a room that he didn't know he was going to talk about and fill it with whatever. I mean, so he had that ability. And then he goes and grabs his second wife, Patsy.
Yep.
He grabs her from here and then makes a life. And then to not be any which way, him strong in his belief of who he was, decides to become a locap. He decides to be another tribe's clan, and he gets in there. Doesn't go away from any of his Siouan tradition and way of life and who he was.
Yeah.
But because he loved that woman, he wanted the kids to have both sides of this way of life, because you guys became clan from your mom, and then you're able to donate from your dad.
Yeah.
So however you live your life and whatever, you have that. So even in that, man, there's a lot of stuff growing up in the heart of Siouan country there that you have to deal with because, oh, your mom is this or your mom is that. And I know how kids are. So it's whatever. You can fill in the blanks. But what I'm saying is we carry that crap around.
Yeah.
And it becomes either who we, through resilient, want to be later, or who, through no resilient, we succumb to all of this addiction.
We fall down and we can't get back up because we don't have.
Get back up.
You know, one of the things I was talking with JT's sister, Cedar, we're visiting about trauma and stuff, you know, and she says to me, she says, you know what my dad said? And I said, what's that? She said that if you have a strong cultural identity, it's hard to get knocked off your feet.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you know what I mean? It's like, that's really profound. You know what I mean? Like, because if you know who you are, first of all, like she said, it's going to be hard for somebody to knock you down. And so then if you do have resiliency, then, you know, like,
So in the conversation we had, remember when we said, does culture play any part in and I said, I don't know if it's true, because we had all of our dads and our grandpas who drank in this area.
No.
But I would agree with that statement, because a lot of them guys didn't become drunks on the street and die.
Yeah.
They eventually were cared for by their family. They had a sense of community, and they moved forward. Yeah. You know, your stepdad rode bulls and did stuff. You know, all of these he did the same stuff, function, worked for IHS, all of these different things they were able to do. I think of Delvin Driver, who found his way through Native American church. He didn't become a bum on the street. He actively did something. The Driver boys, they all did stuff. Yeah. Because they're deep in the heart of their culture.
Right.
And I guess that on that chart again, identifying as who you are maybe gives you that extra resilience.
Yeah, exactly.
To come back. Because they all were knocked down several times, and they all got back up.
You know, I look at my uncles like Brian and Malcolm.
Yeah.
You know, and like the Delvin and all these guys, Screech and all those guys, you know, like, you know what I mean? It's like and I think that culture really does play a really important part, but of course you're going to get resistant, you know, when people talk about it right away, they want to get back to the religious side of it, you know, and all that stuff. And like, for me, I'm like, I don't want to talk about too much about religion. I want to talk about our own inner, you know what I mean? Our own inner strength and how we can get back up, how we help ourselves up, because, you know, I just believe that it's really something, and I think that it could really help people, not only in recovery, but the people that are recovered for a long time, you know, and they kind of feel like unfulfilled or unhappy. Or
a lot of that is, and I know you don't want to talk about religion, a lot of that strength comes from our inner self of power through prayer.
No.
And I don't mean it through any fixed Catholicism, Native American church. I mean, just getting up and having a conversation with Creator. Mm-hmm. You know what? God, today, thank you for allowing me to get up. I'm going to go down and talk to Verdell and those guys and get on the podcast again. Let me say some positive words about things. Let me reinforce what they're doing, you know, and anybody that's heard my voice, give them prayers, give them prayers. Anybody that did whatever, you know, through my lifetime, give them prayers. The people that I didn't forget, make it good. I'm going to try to do better today. That's it. That's it. That's all I do. And then I go through the day and I get home at night. Thank you for allowing me. Maybe I didn't make a difference in anybody's life, but maybe somebody heard me. Maybe those few words they heard, hopefully it'll help them out. That's all I can pray. And for me, that's been my, not in Native American church, not in Catholicism, not in whatever, just being a man of prayer. Do I say I'm holy? Should I pray in front of people? Am I what? No. I'm not saying that. I mean, it's the things for me that have helped me. And even when we talk about the story of finding the second wife and me finding Charity, I had to go through a lot of things and go on the mountainside and say, hey, I somehow, universe, creator, I have something on my forehead that says, take advantage of me. Take advantage of me. I don't want that anymore. I want to be in a relationship. I hope I'm ready. Send somebody to me that's going to be somebody that through prayer, somebody that enjoys humor, somebody that gets along with my kind of spirit, and take away these people. I'll say it out loud in the universe. I'll let you correct it, but these are my prayers. I had to go and do that. How goofy does that sound?
Yeah.
It sounds goofy, but you know what? I don't get those women that want to take advantage of me. I don't get those women that want to screw me over. Took me 3 more years, but then I found somebody.
Yeah.
I waited all that time, Verdell, and I'm sitting here going, what's wrong with me? I'm never going to be with anybody. And then that 8-year go, and I'm so happy on day 1. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to die?
Yeah.
Because now I'm the happiest I've ever been. Creator found somebody for me. I prayed for this person, and here they are. And intimate talking, intimate. I have such intimate conversations with her. And what I mean by that is, she said, my second wife, we never talked like this at all. My first husband, we just knew each other because we grew up with each other. She was 18 when she married her first husband and went through life with him. So all of these things, and then the humor, and then we pray. We pray. Am I ashamed? No, I'm not ashamed. I love to sit there and pray and then take care of me. You know, when that woman left me, she said, you're never going to find anybody. Nobody's going to want you. But I have these things, like each of us have these things to give to a relationship. And some women will look at that and think, that's nothing. That's just a crumb of what I need. And some women will say, oh my God, that's so much stuff you have to offer me. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Just like her. She cooks, she cleans, washes dishes, she makes me fresh bread. And I'm like, holy man, brother, how did I get this lucky?
Yeah.
How did I get this lucky? And she just does it because that's what I do to take care of you.
Yeah.
And my deal is to keep the truck warm for her when she gets in the winter, to make sure she is fed, we'll go eat every day. I mean, all these things that I do, and then make her laugh and try to get her out of here to have a good time every now and again.
Yeah.
And that's what, and she goes, oh my God, you're so good to me. And I'm like, I only do these little things, you know? And so all of these things I'm saying is a part of this resilience to get to where you're going. You don't have to be all of this, just even the sweats. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we pray in sweats and we take care of that. Sometimes we just sweat to cleanse ourselves.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we're holy. It just means we practice something that all 3 of our tribes have done from time immemorial. But that simple life, everybody wants to be a chief, a medicine man, a warrior. What about that tribal member? What about that community member? What about that village member? Nobody wants to be that guy or that person. But that person is important for all 3 of these: chief, warrior, society member. They all function because of all of these villagers. So each one of them is what I'm saying is important. But you notice when people, I realized that in my second life, I was chief. Nobody says, Todd, in my third life, I was just a regular villager and I had no cares in the world and I fished every now and again. Nobody tells that story because it's not exciting. But my deal is they're important too. And we lose track in the sexiness of being one of these three.
Yeah.
But just being a regular person, it's not bad at all either.
What about so Todd, I see you taking down some notes and stuff. Can you want to share your background and your hopes with this Pathways project?
Hello, I'm Todd Mckenzie. I've been listening to these two men here, third man here, and I've been dealing with my dysfunction, looking for answers. Listen to these two gentlemen here that the answers are within. I'm my own teacher and I'm my own student. I am my own person. And I blame a lot of things in the exterior world. I blame it no role models, being in survival mode all the time. But today, and being a dysfunctional person, today I like to practice resiliency, being able to bounce back up and stand and carry this message. I'm a firm believer of the 12-step program. That's my personal skill. That's my coping skill. I rely on who I am and where I'm going and where I've been. Those are my learning tools. I learn from those. I've got all kinds. I have a few addictive behaviors which I'd like to address. Selfishness, being that pity pot. They say I like being on that. A lot of people know me. They feel understand me, including my siblings, ones I grew up with. I've learned to accept. I've learned to make some changes. The changes that I'm doing allows me to address my future. I know my future is uncertain right now, but it's getting better today through resiliency. That word, I get to understand that today because I'm understanding who I am and where I'm going, and I will use my resources to accomplish my short-term goals. Today, my goal is to remain healthy. Today, my goal is also to listen. Sit here and listen today to these the instructors. My role model for today. Each and every, all three of us, this young man's doing a very terrific job. What he does. And I've got addictive behaviors. I've got learned behaviors. But they could be managed today, along with my health issues. I've been labeled to the clinical team as being a type 2 diabetic. How I address those issues is that I quit eating anything white, bread, macaronis, rice, in any kind of dough. And it's rough. Having a hamburger without bread. Try that. But there's alternatives that was suggested. Use spaghetti or the leaves on a lettuce. Try something different. But in actuality, I love bread. I love rice, mac and cheese. I do that. Those are my comfort foods. But they also help me recognize that if I eat too much of it, my sugars will come back. So I'm mindful. I'm mindful of what I take into and what I ingest. I've been mindful for many years. I still went to that pleasure zone, which was mentioned earlier. The pleasure foods, the pleasure drinks. I've indulged in that. Being mediocre is no longer enough. I want to level up. I want to level up in my existence. I want to share what I can to the people who are in recovery, as well as I am myself. I am in recovery today from drugs and alcohol. And I've learned to be resilient. Sure, I get knocked down. Sure, I get back up. And that's repetitiveness. But that's also a learning stepping stool for myself. And with my knowledge that I'm receiving through the pathways, I like that term. The pathways, it's not singular. It's not singular. And I am the person I want to learn. continues a learning process for me. And I've made decisions to expand my horizon. I'm just not centered on Hidatsa, Mandan, Arikara. There's a lot of cultures out there that I can learn from. And there's where I'd like to be today. I'd like to continue this learning process. Because I want to stand back up. I want to do that, and I want to let people know where I'm at, where I'm going, and where I've been. I can say that.
I think, Todd, that one of the things that I'm going to correct you on, and I want you to think about this. I know you use the word mediocre, but that word needs to be in the past tense. You are on the steps of resilience. And even though you make one up and maybe have to take two back, you're no longer mediocre.
Thank you.
Because the mediocreness is what caused the addiction. You are sober now. You're no longer mediocre. You're on those steps going upward. And like you said, you might go 1, 2 up and come back down 1. That's all right. The whole journey, like diabetes, is to get to the top. It don't matter how long you're on the step, just like diabetes. What they don't tell you about being a diabetic is you're going to end up in KDU. But the steps you take to prevent and not do those things, you may die on the 3rd step before you even get to the top, which is KDU. And that's preventing. Because just like alcoholism, like I told you, if you're a self-claimed alcoholic, you will always be an alcoholic till the day you die. It's how you want to manage it and how it saves you. So this resilience pathway, I don't want you to think. You can think how you want, but for me and my love to you is don't think about yourself as mediocre. That's the guy that was drunk. That's the guy that was wallowing in all of that spaghetti and rice and white bread. That guy was mediocre.
Thank you.
You can't be mediocre anymore when you're trying to do good things for yourself. You're no longer that. You're on the steps of resilience, just like you're on the steps of diabetes. By stopping all of that, you're never going to get to the top of steps, which is, again, KDU. But that's the path of being a diabetic. Also, the path of alcoholism is dying somewhere of cirrhosis. If you don't get drunk and get in a car accident or kill somebody or mess something up. My deal is that's the pathway. That's the end result of drinking is cirrhosis. How do you stop getting to that end way of cirrhosis and alcoholism? You stop drinking. You still may end up dying, but you're going to live longer with the disease. So you got to think of it in that term.
All right.
For me, I'm a diabetic. And so I've been able to control my sugars all this time. But when I learned I'm going to end up at KDU, I'm fighting right now on that escalator up to stay off of the top, which is KDU, and avoid these foods. I'm still eating sugar because guess what? I'm way in control. My AC is 5'7", 5'8", used to be 15, 14, 16. In other words, they said, you should be clinically dead. If you're a white guy, which they claim I am, I should have been dead. But I got them all the way down. Lost all this weight, trying to fight. So guess what? I get a little bit of whatever's every now and again. Then I have to go back and not do this and not do that. A lot of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
A lot of water.
Yeah.
7 to 8 a day. I just go through the water. Yeah. But you know that. So, I mean, I just want you to start thinking of yourself. I know when we're talking about us on the bottom, well, you're not on the bottom anymore.
All right.
You made a step up. And so all I'm saying is realize that step. Realize that step. Keep going forward.
I think Todd made a really good point. One of the end things that we're trying to do with the resiliency is setting goals.
Yeah.
Setting goals and how I understand it is like so if you look at people that have this Showa Nico has taken their power and they made them victims.
Yeah.
So victims, like get to blame their life on everybody else. You know what I mean?
Never their fault.
Yeah, it's not my fault. I'm not responsible for that. I'm not accountable. One of the things they can tell about a victim is if you ask them, what are your goals and dreams? You know what I mean? They don't have any.
They don't have any.
A piece of fruit could be hanging right here.
Yep.
And they're like, oh man, I want that, but I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. But if a healthy person will be like, give me a chair, give me a ladder, give me a stick, I'm going to get that. I want that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's so this to show us why Nico makes us victims.
Mm-hmm.
And there's benefits to being a victim. You know what I mean? You get to blame everything else on everybody else, and it's not my fault. No accountability, like we were talking about. You know?
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings back the point of sober or recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of because we have people in our lives that say as well, I just can't drink or I just can't do drugs, you know, and it's just like, well, why? You know, are you working on recovery? You know, so what does recovery look like to them? Because we know that they're just being sober.
Mm.
And I think with pathways, with what this is, it's like getting to the core of
It's recovery.
yeah. And it's why do you want to be sober? There's obviously a reason, but for them it'd be, well, just because I can't drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't mean like you got to be a pain in the ass for everybody else around you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that becomes a point where it's just like, well, shit, go back to what you're doing if you're going to be miserable and bringing everybody down, you know?
Let's take the A off the whole and become whole.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I mean?
it comes to the conversation we had a little bit before.
Right.
Through recovery and being sober, what does it do to people? It makes them self-righteous. And what I mean by that is, look at me. I'm sober. I don't need your recovery program. I'm better than you. You know what? I'm a state champion.
Yeah.
I was a state champion for North Dakota. I did this. I played ball at the University of North Dakota. I don't think any of you have heard me talk like that, have you? So I'm mentioning it now, but I've done those things, but I don't brag about those things. I don't talk about those things. People that really know me know I've done that. Yeah. And I don't really brag them out because I don't feel like I have to. Yeah. They have there's something I did way back when. Yeah. It's not something I'm doing now. So it's not relevant to who I am. Yeah. The other thing too is I don't go, well, you know what? I'm a world-renowned MC. Yeah. You know, this is the 20th year I'm doing Denver. I'm the shit. Look at me. Yeah. I have done that. Yeah. But my deal is that's what I do. That's not who I am.
Right.
So again, in the sobriety, if you just sober up, Verdell, like you did, yeah. I really love the fact that you're not self-righteous and better than anybody. You looked for other ways. So in a way, you kind of found a way to not only recover, but be sober. Mm-hmm. Most people will get sober and they get that holier than thou attitude. Yeah. And that's what JT was saying. Well, if you're going to be that way, then just stay drunk. I'd rather have you normal and be drunk than act like you're, for lack of better words, that your shit don't stink. Yeah. Because that's what self-righteous means. Well, look at me. My shit don't stink. I got sober. I don't need that. I don't need this. Yeah. Look at me. Yeah. Todd, look at what did you do? Look at me. You know, it's like, whoa, it's not about that. Mm-hmm. It's not about me and you, Todd. You're on your own adventure. I'm on my own adventure. And don't ever say that your success is built on what you do that I did. Your success is built on what you did better than you did a month ago. And your success is what you will do in 2 months that's better than what you're doing right now. It's got nothing to do with me. Your success is built on you, and that's how you should measure it. So in when we do these things, I think that we really need to invest, Verdell, in the recovery, not just sobriety, but the recovery. Because if I'm sober and I say, well, I quit drinking, I'm sober. Yeah. Anything can trigger me. Yeah. I don't have my lightsaber. I'm getting hit by everything. And then I'm 6 days away from being a drunk again. Yeah. Yeah. But if I went through recovery and I know how to duck and I'm able to have the strength to build a lightsaber in this example we gave, I'm able to knock all the things that could have made me be whatever out of the air and they don't touch me. Yeah. That's full recovery because I know what will work for me. And guess what? When my lightsaber goes out and I got no strength, I need to come to a meeting or I need to call my sponsor or I need to call somebody that I know or a group that say, hey man, I just need to sit in here now. I need to be with some people that have been through what I've been through, and I just need to be here because my strength is all dwindled down. Mm-hmm. And maybe they'll pray for you. Maybe they'll help you. Maybe they'll increase your energy. Maybe you're able to go to bed that night thinking, well, I went here and I got help and I didn't need that. Eventually you won't need that because your resiliency is built up so high in your recovery. You still will be an alcoholic, but you will have all the means to stop anything that does. And granted, just like Verdell said, there may be a trigger that gets you close to falling off or not. You might fall off, you might get back on, and you fix that trigger and you go forward again. And then this time, maybe you're sober for 10 years. Maybe you're sober for 5. It's the journey. If I'm going to say to you today, Todd, you listen to all of us, you're going to be sober for the rest of your life. That's a lie. I can only help you with the tools and continue to help you with the tools of this program of recovery that you make of it. Just like the diabetes fight. I know good damn well that you quit everything, but there's always a little bit of spaghetti or a taste of rice that's on the counter that you might eat. And there's nothing wrong with that. Portions. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But what I'm saying is it's still going to happen. Yeah. It just depends on how long and how good your recovery is as to how long it will happen. Just like the whole diabetes thing. I'm going to end up in KDU. But if I fight right now, I might be 89 years old by the time I'm get to that point. I'd rather go in there then than at 60.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? I'd rather live my life now, pick up some grandkids, be whatever, have a significant other, or be a dependable uncle or grandpa to my brother or sister's kids. That's what I want to be. Maybe that's all I can be. Yeah. There's nothing mediocre about that. There's nothing mediocre about being a great uncle or grandpa. It's definitely nothing. And guess what that is? Second chance.
Going back to the recovery portion of it, a lot of people think of being sober as a burden. Yeah. Because we learned that a lot of people say it's not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. But here it's just like, rather than thinking about it as a burden, think about it as a journey, something new, somewhere, you've always wanted to go. Yeah. There's always going to be troubles and difficulties during it, but it doesn't mean that, hey, you can't keep going forward, and a lot of people just think like when we, like myself, for instance, I never thought I'd be sober for, a month. And sometimes I get to a month and I'd be like, well, maybe I could have a couple drinks, go out, try it out. Same thing, same routine, same mess up. And then my dad was the one that pointed that out to me. And then after a year, I didn't even think about it. I was court ordered to, what do you call it? Not
outpatient treatment.
Outpatient. Yeah. Court ordered for that. And then, by then when I went to outpatient, I was already doing 3 months and I was like working on myself and just abstaining from alcohol. And to me, like I was going through a bad divorce, custody over kids, and it just put me in a pretty tough predicament. And it was just like, I was on that plane of, I don't want to live, I don't want to die. So that was just the right place for me to just get lost. So when I went to outpatient, it just slowly just learning that it's not bad. There's people there that are court ordered just like I am, but for them, they're mad because of the fact that they can't drink. Mm. And for us, the first step is admit that we are powerless. Mm. And I think that is the true key, is admitting you're powerless. Yeah. Because a lot of people just think, well, me in particular, just 1 month, 1 month. And after that, it was just became like after a year, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. But what was hard was driving by liquor stores and saying, I should stop in, It's just like no reason. No reason. Yeah. But that's the tough part in recovery, is like, rather than thinking of it as a burden, think of it as a journey,
I think one of my Mazooks, Marlon, he always says stuff like, we're not our disease and we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, and I think we get caught into that. We get we start to identify with that, you know, we start to think, you know, I'm an alcoholic, you know, then we kind of really get into that, you know, and you can fall right into that, go down that rabbit hole, you know, and start get lost in there. And then you're like, and I think that's what a lot of the issues is like, we need to understand this, all this stuff, you know. It's like, we're not our addiction. We're not our diabetes, you know, we're not our thoughts and our distorted thoughts caused from a Waniko, you know, and our emotions. We're not any of that stuff. We're human beings first, you know, and we just want to be loved and accepted, you know, and when we do that for ourselves, that's when things change. That's when we start to see the difference. We're like, wow.
The other thing is when you feel that, like he's saying, that love and that acceptance.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that alcoholism goes away. It doesn't. You'll still be alcohol. But the need for that comfort that the alcohol gives you is lessened because you're finally getting fed your actual need of wanting to be and wanting to be with and loved. And after that happens, this lessens and lessens. Still going to be there. If you do a surprise toast 20 years into the deal at somebody's deal and you take a champagne, you're still going to go be a drunk. After that, you're going to fall off. But what I'm saying is it's a less and less deal. Because basically you're fulfilling actually your anger, your hate, your pain, all of that. You're feeding into that and giving it what it wants. This stuff lessens because this is a comfort for this that really hurts. So I'm not saying that it goes away. I'm just saying it lessens the need. So JT now, hopefully, is in this place with his beautiful wife and kids and stepkids and his kid. And they kind of call themselves the Brady Bunch, but they're running all over the country, giving kids back and bringing kids back and then living their lives, doing everything safe and sober and sobriety with whatever. That I don't think he has that thought anymore because now he has all of these things that make him feel like a dad, having a family, having kids, that it's still going to be there. The alcoholism's still there, but the less frequency of wanting to stop by that liquor store or noticing that liquor store again dissipates. The need to fill that and even to challenge yourself that I've been 3 years sober. I think I can handle it now. That doesn't even become a question. It doesn't even become a question because it's like, hey, I'm where I should be and I'm moving through life like where I should be and I feel whole and I know who I am. Once you do that, this guy over here that ran over here and said, I need to have this alcohol to feel who I am and understand who I am in the world and feel some love is gone because you no longer need that. So in a way, the easiest answer is to find out what's wrong with you and fix it. But do you think we take that way? No, we go and find anything that'll numb it, take it away, make us feel better without dealing with any of this.
Correct. What I'm doing is I get to identify with people with the same illness that I have by me attending the AA meetings. There's where I find a lot of camaraderie. I find a lot of source there, a lot of strength. I find a lot of strength with people that I identify with.
Because you're not the only one now.
Right.
There's other people that can feel what you felt and what you go through and what you happen. There's nothing wrong with that because that village that you're trying to be a part of, this is a village that understands what you've been through. And that's what you need. Because guess what? Grandma and auntie and uncle and all this that have gone through their own stuff, they don't got time to give you that. They don't.
Nice.
Because you need to find it with these guys. And strengthen it and go back to auntie, uncle, grandma says, you know what? I know you might be able not to do this, but I love you. And I want you to know that I always wanted to be a part of this family and I'm proud. I'm going to try to do my best to not be the way I was. And if you can handle it, that's fine. If you can't handle it, there's something I needed to say. And you go back to your world and make it happen. But it's this strength of community through the AA, through the 12 steps, through these people is where you're going to find your village and your strength. It's just after that, the resiliency of taking that and being that higher up leader of, I have some answers because you went through all this. It's not going to say you're not alcoholic. You're just going to say, I've got some wisdom now. And I want to share it. Then you're a vast resource to all the younger people that can identify. But it's why we go through that.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't be an alcoholic and say, well, I'm going to put you back in the deal and then you're going to survive. No, because you already hurt those people. They're already upset with you. They're all of that they're carrying. Not you. They're carrying.
Yeah.
So.
You know, before you guys got here, me and Todd were talking, and I said, you know, Todd, I said, the thing that you're doing, the meetings and the AA and stuff, I said, that's really the first stop. It's like stopping the drinking. You know what I mean? And then after that, that's what this resiliency stuff can kick in, like the aftercare part of it, you know, that kind of stuff. I think that's the important part, you know, about AAs when we have to stop first, we have to stop the alcohol, you know, or the whatever it
the
is.
Drugs or whatever. Yep.
Yeah. When we start to do that, then we can start to heal. But yeah.
But what I find fascinating, Verdell, is a lot of this stuff is good stuff. And I wonder in my stupidity, and I mean stupidity of lack of knowing what they're doing at sober lodges and all this other stuff. Are they doing any of this?
Yeah.
Because I really think this is awesome stuff that you got here. Is it really triggers into some self-identifying things.
Yeah.
I may be not an alcoholic, or maybe I'm in denial about being an alcoholic, but I relate it to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Even through my divorce and all of this stuff, I've found common ground on everything. I hope I've been able to talk about issues and do whatever. And maybe I'm not alcoholic. Maybe I am, but again, maybe I'm in denial. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the pain is real, and realizing and doing all of that is real.
Yeah.
And so how do we get this to everybody?
Yeah, that's just it.
Like, God.
You know, that's what we talk about a lot. And I think what people don't understand is what we talked about. I think what happens in these sober lodges is that we think it's the spiritual side of it, right? We think that, but I think it's not that. I think it's the opposite. I think it's the camaraderie and the belonging and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was telling Lawrence, I gave Lawrence an example. I said, you know, back in I think it was in the 90s, the grade levels across the country was going down. And so they did a study and they said, look at all these people that have good grades. They all have high self-esteem. Hey, let's go self-esteem. You know, so they really went hard. And about 5 years later, they come back and they say, you know what? The grade levels are getting worse. Mm-hmm. Then they realized it was the other way around. It was high grades raised high self-esteem. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we're getting wrong. And like me and JT were talking earlier, we're talking about different things. And I said, a lot of people don't want to go in their past. They'll say, I don't live there.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, well, we don't live in a spiritual world either.
No.
We live in the present world. And that's why this resilience is so hard, is like our whole thing is about relationships. You know what I mean? The spirituality is a source of strength and all that, you know, it's part of it, but if people take it to, you know, literally like this is, I'm going to just give everything to that. And it's like, well, no, you still got to live. You still got to get along with your fellow man, and you got to understand all that stuff. That's just my philosophy though, you know.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you in that same stuff.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think just like Todd hit on a very important thing is, as he's sobered up and recovered with the AA people that have gone through a lot of this stuff, that's a group. He functions within that group because they understand. Sober living, it's a group of individuals that now have gone through being sober and allegedly putting together the 12 steps or whatever the process they got to be sober. And they're talking to each other. Man, I could just taste a beer. Man, I could just taste that whiskey. I could just, what do you do when you do that? Well, I eat some licorice and I'm all right. I'm okay. Well, I don't know how to, you know, or I get down and pray, or I go to Native American church, or I go take a sweat, or, you know, all of these, because they're functioning at that same level. But my question, Verdell, is, have they really, really gone through resilience to give themselves the tools to fight what they're doing? And I don't think they have. No. They've gone through the program of the 12 steps, which are very good. And then we go to the whatever. And I think that, Verdell, I think we need this, because one of the biggest things when my dad was going through alcoholism and going through the 12 steps, the lady at Heartview said, indigenous people have an easy way of fulfilling all of these and still being messed up. And she couldn't identify. And now all these years later, Verdell, these are the things that mess them up. You're talking about reliance, and this living well again shows how do we fix that so we lessen the craving of this and move forward. I think it's awesome, bro. I'm glad we came down, JT.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that really, if you really don't know yourself and you don't understand yourself, you really don't understand like what's the most important thing to you? What are your values? What are your virtues? What are your principles? You know, when I was going through this divorce stuff, I'm like, I'm gonna go to Billings, or I'm gonna go to Rapid City and get drunk. Shit. Nobody will care. Nobody know. You know what I mean? Feel sorry for yourself. Yep. So as I was driving through, I was like, oh my God, this isn't who I am. Yeah. You know what I mean? This isn't me. This is not, and I start thinking about it, and I'm like, who are you? You know, like what do you value? Then I start realizing it's like, you're supposed to be a praying man. Why don't you start praying? You know what I mean? So I start praying, and I swear to God, I see this. I'm like, Creator God answered my prayer through Carol, my wife, Carol. She came into my life, and it was like, wow. But anyway, so when you start thinking about values and what's important, that's really important part of this resiliency, and the goal setting and all that stuff. One time this guy come up to me and he said, I really like what you say and all that stuff, but I'm gonna still go and eat that double cheeseburger and those fries and that large Coke, and as we get into it, and that don't help me. And I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. I said, what do you value? He said, I value my family right away, and I'm like, so what is the goal you'd like to see? Well, I want to see my grandson play basketball. I want to see him go to state. And I swear to God, you could just see the damn lights going. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to get there if I keep doing
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you got, when you start to think about this resiliency and all this stuff, it's really important to really understand that stuff, because we understand, like, our identity drives our behavior. If we say we're a cowboy and we're going to go around stuff, we say we're a boxer, you know what I mean? It drives a lot of our behavior. If we say we're just, honest, good person or whatever, it's going to drive our behavior. So as I start to understand, I'm like, wow, man, this is really important. We need to understand all this stuff. And then when I started thinking about it, I was like, man, this is groundbreaking stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this could really help a lot of people, man. It could help our kids. It could help, it could heal the people. You know what I mean?
But Verdell, in this groundbreaking stuff that's important, don't you find this just as, this is something that we already should know.
Right.
It's so simplistic in its whatever. It's just something that we should know. I mean, it's that easy and very whatever that my deal is. It's almost like common sense, and we're not using any common sense. You know what I mean? And I say that in all the greatness that you've come to find out this stuff. Yeah. And I don't mean to put you down. I'm just saying, it's just kind of regular values that everybody can live with. I mean, it's not like saying you got to go to the hill and you got to become somebody. They're not saying that. We're just saying, hey, look at yourself. Right. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? Right. I mean, it's simple questions. It's just like you're saying on the deal. Well, who am I? Yeah. That's part of the self-reflection. Right. But a lot of people, Verdell, don't ever ask that question. No. Who am I? What do I stand for? Yeah. Who do I want to be, or who do I think I am? Yeah. And am I that person? Yeah. It's those questions of philosophy that we all ask ourselves at some point or another, maybe not in philosophy, but that's why I mean, and I'm not trying to put it down, Verdell. I think this is brilliant, but it's so simplistic in its way. It might go over some people's educated heads that they're like, no, that's
well, some people will say, well, I already do that. We do that over here. We do, you know what I mean? So they kind of try to make it like, well, it's kind of nothing, but if you get down to it, I think it actually is from our wounded spirit. It's like we don't see it like that. We're not understanding it. You know what I mean? And so we're so wounded that we can't see the common,
But it's like I tell everybody, if you were able to see your faults, you wouldn't need a psychiatrist. You wouldn't need counseling. You wouldn't need anything, because you could fix yourself. Yeah. But sometimes we can't see ourselves. No. So it's sometimes in this conversation, whether it's through AA meetings, through recovery, or just sitting around the table. I think all of us sitting around the table have discovered something about each other that we're like, wow, somebody else did that. I'm sure, Verdell, you're sitting there going, holy shit, somebody else went through what I went through my divorce.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nobody told me. But you start learning.
That's one of the things that the learning methodology or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Is that's what we're going to do. We're going to get 6 people, 6 men, 6 women.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to start discussing this stuff. You know, that saying is if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others, you know, And another thing I think that's really important that me and Kelly Fox, talk a lot about is like, we talk a lot about, like the people, like we bought into this colonized thinking. Everything, we have to have people that come to us and heal us. And, you know, because of this dependency and all that, you know, the government dependency.
And they have to be white people.
Yeah. And what the hell's the matter with us? You know what I mean? What really bugs me is like we pay people thousands of dollars to come over here and talk.
Yep.
But we'll give our own people $50 or a blanket. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell's that about? You know, like,
it's
so what me and Kelly always discuss is like, it's time for us to stop being the specimen and start being the scientists.
Yeah.
You know, we're the first scientists. I think I talked with JT about that.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we got a lot of knowledge and it's within and we know it, but we're just not applying it, or we're just kind of like, we think that it's not good enough, or you know what I'm getting at?
Well, we think because we've gone through the hard knocks to understand at some level, because this is how Indians are. Yeah. We don't need the written word of education to understand, but we think it's less credible. Like I would say, don't you think, Todd, everything we discussed here would be at a master's thesis level. Do we all have masters? Just you do. We don't. Yeah. But my deal is, we get credibility from the white man that says that because he has his master's degree. Yeah. But he's not saying more or less the same things that we're saying. We're talking in a way that Indian sitting there or that Indian woman or man, they understand us because we've been through it. Yeah. This guy will say, well, philosophically, if you look at this difference, and you're like, what the hell did he just say? I don't know. Pay him. Pay him.
If you look at the way these counselors and stuff are, they've never experienced it. No. You know, they don't know they read it from a book and you know, all that stuff. They understand that, but shit, they don't know. You know, like they don't understand. Like
the other thing is they haven't lived their life enough to take their trauma and understand that trauma or learn from that trauma in mistakes. Yeah, I think a big educator on you. Oh, you got your master's degree. Yeah. Education on me was going through that divorce. Yeah. And how did we result from it? And what did we learn? And what did we gain? And who did we become? Yeah. All of these things that you can pay this white guy thousands of dollars to give back to you in 15 sessions. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we just talked about it in 2.5 hours. Yeah. So I'm saying, you know, what the hell? Yeah. But I agree with you.
So to us, it's a blessing, right? Yeah. That it was a blessing. It was a learning opportunity and it was great and all that. But to them, they just create customers. Yeah. You know, they're just like, hey, it's like, you know, I really disagree with a lot of sending our people off. Mm-hmm. The problems are here. We don't identify with counselors out there.
Well, the other thing is you send them to get fixed out in Phoenix. Yeah. They still got to come back here to live.
There you go. Right,
are you sending them out to Phoenix to live for the rest of their life? Because if you do, when they got fixed out there, they're not going to have a problem. Yeah. Because they don't know anybody. Yeah. But what do they do when they come back here? They got cousins that are still drinking. They got their mother's still going on. Their brothers. Yeah. How do you live in that? Yeah. Well, they didn't teach them any of that because they're in Arizona. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all, that's the big debate, you know. Yeah. We need to tell white people in our colonization too.
Well, I was telling these guys when I first started to come down, I said, there's a thing called hegemony. It's all about white supremacy. You know what I mean? Everything, if you look at it, all the way things are set up and all that stuff, I said, even the movies, there's always a white character, right? He's always like dancing with the wolves, with the big man. You know what I get? All those, that's that idea that white men are better than everybody. You know what I mean? That's just my own, how I seen it. Cause I had to study that too. And about all that kind of stuff about, really got into the oppression part of it, you know, really understood that, you know, even like toxic masculinity, you know what I mean? Like you have to, you know, like they think that power and control is love, and it's not. Domestic violence and all that stuff, that's what it's like based on fear and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think domestic violence was caused from just anger issues. But when you start to understand it, it's from power and control, and you're like, holy smokes, I never even understood that stuff. But we could go on for hours. You know what I mean? But yeah, thanks a lot, JT.
Yeah, we want to wrap it up on the pathway. Thank you, Verdell and Todd, for inviting us into having not only to have it on the podcast and get it out to the people, because I know a lot of our brothers and sisters are looking for recovery. Some of them are on the 12 steps. Some of them maybe are on the step of this with diabetes and the other. So it's good to get that out there to everybody. And I hope, Verdell, after we air this and do this, maybe you get some calls. Maybe you get some other people that want to implement this in other areas in indigenous country. Yeah. You know what I mean? In Indian country, whether it's in Canada or here. Yeah. So I wish you well on that. I truly have gained more knowledge just by being here and visiting, and also in the camaraderie of having the same kind of things that we've learned through. Yeah. So I just want to thank you, Verdell and Todd, for letting us be a part of your afternoon here on Thursday, JT.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to sit in and talk about your visions and goals with the recovery project.
Yeah.
We appreciate it so much. Yeah. And to everybody that's listening, you want to give them some information where they can reach you?
I'll see what you have. There's one right here, right up above you. I'll grab it.
Pathways to health and wellness. The road to recovery is made easier by the support of their loved ones. Families with recoveries, living well. Idish Nawanu. And that's, Verdell's going to put the number up.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to say is my name is Verdell ThunderHorse. I changed my name. I had a lot of issues when I was younger. People would say mean shit to me when we talked about that. People would, say, "Hey, he's not a real Smith. He's a little bastard." Really mean stuff like that, and it really bothered me. Growing up, and even like the other day, it seemed like people would always use that, like try to like hurt my feelings or something, put me in that box, But about 2 months ago, I was at the C-store, and this drunk guy comes walking up and, "Hey, log," kind of like that, and it's not so much the name, it's just like the feeling that you get from it, you know what I mean? It's like, damn, man. And I didn't realize how much my spirit was diminished by that, so I changed my name. My name comes from my brother Paul Rosario gave me this Indian name, Basically it was like before a storm, there's thunder that sounds like horses are coming. And that's why I just shortened it. You know what I mean? Like that's yeah. So, but if you get I'm really interested in getting out into Indian country and trying to help people, because I think this is important stuff. And if we can get it out into the communities, our communities, our people would be so much better,
Yeah. How I've learned how to say ThunderHorse in Hidatsa is Dahurigi Izuashka. Dahurigi is thunder.
We got a lot of things going on in Canada, Verdell, and maybe we could try to conference you in or get it. It's a lot of the missing indigenous relatives, MIA. So maybe we can pigeonhole that or do whatever, because there's also men's way conferences that they want to put on and women's way conferences. So maybe some of these things can be implemented in some of that. Yeah. I don't know, but I mean, they're doing that. It's an initiative. Yeah. We'll sure pass your name on and see if we can get you out.
Well, I think for me, how I seen it, I wanted to start a treatment program for Native Americans. That was me and Carol's idea. Mm-hmm. Then when we start, like I said, there's no real definite answer for what caused addiction. Yeah. So then we're like, you know what? Rather than go that route, let's go for resiliency, kind of like aftercare or a prevention kind of thing. Let's focus on that, because if we don't want to end up arguing with people. It's this, or it's our genealogy, or it's a disease, or what I mean.
But I think, Verdell, in your study and what you've done, this is a real simplistic, big part of recovery that I don't think anybody even talks about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the recovery that we're paying for now as a tribe nationwide here and in America and just for our tribe, we're spending millions of dollars on this. So my deal is, this is, and I don't mean again to say simplistic in that it's just
No,
simple.
it
I'm
is.
just saying it's kind of very common sense, these issues that we've gotten away from, that were a part of our lives, that we're so colonized that we don't see it. And we can't see it because of boarding school and all of that era. But I really think that it should be put in all of that stuff. And so I think you've identified a niche.
Yeah.
And I understand the treatment deal, but eventually through this, it might get to that. But my deal is you've uncovered a real big deal, if not just a whole learning process for people going through trauma, period, to deal with before. We could even call it preventive addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all kinds of whatever we could do to do that. I mean, that's why it sounds like I'm saying it simplistically and not in a bad way, but just some common sense stuff that we need to do in order to identify with our indigenous selves of who we are. I just love it, Verdell. Thank you for having us in here.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's the
You know it. Yeah.
Well, in closing, you guys want to give some shout outs to anybody?
Oh, I just want to say hi to Carol, my wife. My wife has she has terminal lung cancer, and so she's like, let's work on this. And it's not really complete, but she's like, pull the trigger. It's time. All right.
So you're on a mission.
Yeah.
I like to give a shout out to the Sober Lodge in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
The management program there. I got a routine, being responsible and accountable for my actions. Thank you.
Oh,
I just like to say in closing, with meeting Verdell and Todd, you know, I come from Mandaree, and so I know a lot of people down here, and I'm excited to be a part of this and be in this adventure. But one of the things I want you to know, that those of you that are recovering, those of you that are going through this in sober lodges, in treatment, and whatever you come out, you're never very far away from your people, and always know that you have a home to come back to. I think we lose track of that in community. I think we lose track of that in our sense of, well, they're drunks and we're not, you know, and they're our people, and they're not drunks. They're dealing with some stuff. And once they've made that commitment to recovery, either through the pathways or not, you're always welcome home to be a part of our people. And I think we lose track of that.
There's no off-reserves and on-reserves.
Yeah.
You know,
There's just reserves.
well, that's what I call it. I call it res.
Yeah,
you know,
I saw that.
It's like, it's not to insinuate nothing. It's to realize it's like all this come from our historical trauma.
Yep,
you know,
exactly.
it's all part of that. You know, it's like has nothing to do with any, you know, like what we usually call reserves and stuff like that. It's really it's the whole dynamic of our abuse and neglect and, you know, all that stuff that happened to our people. You know, like I have a lot of compassion for our elders and our grandparents, you know, and people like that, because they went through a lot, man.
They endured a lot with none of this stuff. So
when I was going through that divorce, I was telling you that state I was in.
Yeah.
Later on, I thought about it. I was like, just imagine how those little kids must have felt.
With no coping mechanism at all. And that's why a lot of them have that damage with thinking this all happened because of me.
Yeah.
My mom and dad are not together because of me.
Yeah.
If I were a better kid, this wouldn't have happened. Right. So there's a lot of that.
As you can see, we're touching on some deep stuff, but we'll save that for the next time.
Exactly.
Again, shout out to Uncle Verdell and Todd and always Lawrence for taking us through with this and being a part of the podcast. Shout out to everybody that's watching, listening. We're coming back, and let us know what your thoughts on the project that we're working on, and also, you know, helping out in your sobriety, your recovery, your journey. You know, reach out to us because we're all on our own journey as well. And this is a sober podcast, and I'm proud to say that.
Yep.
But yeah.
Thanks a lot, JT.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming down, Lawrence. You guys, thanks a lot, man.
No.